Everyone thought that opening scene was just a joke. But it wasn't. In the first 5 minutes of A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, the show tells you exactly what kind of story this is, and most people missed it. It's about two nobodies at the edge of history, and why that matters. This breakdown explains why the opening episode of A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms is not a simple pilot, not a lighthearted fantasy, and definitely not Game of Thrones but smaller. We'll unpack why the shocking opening scene is a mission statement, how Dunk and Egg's meeting redefines knighthood, why Dunk really rejects Egg at first, and how a single shooting star quietly reveals what this entire series is actually about. Everyone laughed at that opening scene. Most viewers thought it was a joke, a crude gag meant to signal that this show would be lighter, sillier, and less serious than Game of Thrones. But if that's all you saw in the first 5 minutes of A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, then you missed the entire point of the series. Because that opening moment isn't a gag, it's a warning. The show deliberately sets you up to expect something grand. The camera language feels familiar. The pacing slows, your brain, trained by years of prestige fantasy, braces for a sweeping title sequence filled with heraldry and legacy. Instead, Dunk squats in the dirt and relieves himself on screen. That decision isn't there to shock you. It's there to reset you. This is not a story about power seen from above. It's a story about power seen from ground level, about the people history walks past while chasing legends. From its very first breath, A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms tells you, if you're waiting for thrones, dragons, and divine destiny, you're watching the wrong show. Based on the tales of Dunk and Egg by George R.R. Martin, this series understands something that even Game of Thrones sometimes forgot. Fantasy isn't powerful because of scale. It's powerful because of perspective. Dunk isn't introduced as a hero. He's introduced as a man barely holding himself together. He has no banner, no army, no witnesses. Just the memory of a knight who once gave his life shape and whose death has left Dunk hollow. And then comes Egg. Egg doesn't enter the story like a chosen one. There's no swelling music. He's just there in the stables, bald, mouthy. Watching Dunk too closely, Dunk assumes he belongs to someone else, because that's how the world works. People belong somewhere. When Dunk realizes Egg doesn't belong to anyone, the mood shifts. The show doesn't force the connection. It lets it sit there uncomfortably. Dunk doesn't ask questions. He doesn't press. He already understands what it means to be a child without an anchor. He lived it in Flea Bottom, and that understanding is exactly why he refuses Egg's request to become his squire. Here's the uncomfortable truth most viewers miss. Dunk doesn't reject Egg because he's poor. He rejects him because responsibility terrifies him. Dunk knows what it means to be shaped by another person. Sir Arlan didn't just train him, he gave him identity, purpose, structure. And once you've been given that, losing it leaves a scar. Taking on Egg wouldn't just be an act of kindness. It would be an admission that Dunk is ready to become what Sir Arlan once was. And he isn't sure he is. So he tosses Egg a coin and walks away, telling himself he's done the right thing, that he's been practical, sensible, adult. But this show is smarter than that. It doesn't let Dunk off the hook. When Dunk returns later, defeated and humiliated after failing to get anyone to vouch for him, he finds Egg waiting beneath the elm tree, calmly cooking dinner like this was always inevitable. Egg doesn't argue his case. He doesn't beg. He simply acts as if the decision has already been made. And that's when Dunk breaks. Not because Egg convinces him, but because Dunk recognizes himself. Dunk sees a boy clinging to the smallest chance of stability. He sees someone choosing hope without permission. And in that moment, Dunk understands something he's been avoiding all episode. Refusing Egg won't protect him from pain. It will only guarantee emptiness. So he accepts him. Not as an order, not as a command, but as a pact. Dunk promises to treat Egg well as long as he works hard. That matters. This is not feudal authority. This is mutual survival. Dunk needs purpose just as badly as Egg needs protection. Neither of them can afford illusions about hierarchy. This is where A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms draws its most important line in the sand. Unlike Game of Thrones, power here does not flow from bloodlines, prophecy, or spectacle. It flows from character. From choice. From what you do when no one is watching. The episode reinforces this by repeatedly returning to Sir Arlan. Dunk's grief isn't romanticized. It's practical. Sir Arlan took him off the streets and gave him direction. Dunk's eulogy isn't about glory. It's about gratitude, about being seen by someone who mattered. By taking Egg on, Dunk isn't chasing knighthood. He's paying a debt forward. And then the episode ends exactly where it needs to, under an elm tree, not a tent. No banners, no feasts, no false comfort. Just two figures lying on bare ground, staring at the open sky. When the shooting star appears, Egg calls it good luck. Dunk realizes something quietly devastating. That star wasn't meant for the lords and knights sleeping beneath silk canopies. It was meant for them, the ones exposed to the world, the ones without protection. This isn't a rejection of knighthood. It's a reminder that knighthood means nothing without character. Up to this point, the episode has been stripping Dunk of every illusion he has about legitimacy. He wants recognition. He wants approval. He wants someone important to say he belongs. Every attempt fails. Every door closes, and then the universe hands him something else. Instead, perspective. The shooting star doesn't promise glory. It doesn't guarantee success. It simply acknowledges reality. Dunk and Egg are lucky not because they will become great, but because they see the world clearly. They expect nothing. Everything they earn will be real. That's what makes their bond dangerous. Egg is observant. Too observant. He sees things Dunk doesn't. Dunk is kind to a fault, clinging to an idea of honor the world no longer rewards. Together, they form something rare in Westeros, a partnership built on decency instead of ambition. This is why the first episode matters so much. It's not setup, it's a manifesto. It tells you that this story won't escalate through spectacle. It will deepen through consequence. Victories will be small, losses will hurt, and meaning will come not from titles but from choices made when no one is keeping score. Even the humor serves this purpose. The crude opening doesn't undermine the story, it humanizes it. This is a world where knights get cold, hungry, and tired, where dignity is something you practice, not something you inherit. By the time the credits roll, you understand something crucial. Dunk and Egg are not heroes yet. They're not legends. They're just two people who decided to walk forward together instead of alone. And that choice, to believe that decency matters in a world that doesn't reward it, is the real gamble Dunk makes. That's why A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms isn't trying to outdo Game of Thrones. It's trying to remind us why stories like that mattered in the first place. Before dragons, before thrones, before history decided who was worth remembering, there were people like this, sleeping under trees. Watching stars meant only for them. And that's the story this series is really telling.
Go to sleep, boy.
All the other knights are in their pavilions by now.
What'd your mother say to that?
Not much. She's dead.
Do I look like a half man to you?
Aye, half man, half giant.
Watching stars meant only for them. And that's the story this series is really telling.